Okay, in this video, we are going to look at rectangles. So we've been working with squares. I'm going to take my square and I'm going to fold it in half instead of diagonally across. And I'm going to create myself two rectangles. All right, and we're just going to look at rectangles in this video. Okay, so just like the square, we have a rectangle that, and again, make it a little bit straighter here. We have a rectangle, and I have the rectangle replicated on graph paper as well. So we've got this larger one, but we also have two smaller ones here. And we can see that the area of the original here is 6 units tall. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units tall, and 4 along the base. And there's that crossover. There's that right angle. See that? Where they cross. That's my L of the shape. So I know that this has 24 square units. Okay. Now, just like we learned in the video with the square, we have our rectangles that also create triangles when we cut them in half. So if I were to take a ruler and I'm just going to do from corner to corner, and I'm going to draw a diagonal. I'm going to line up corner to corner. I'm going to draw like diagonal line here with my pen. Okay, and then I'm going to cut carefully from corner to corner. I've just created myself two triangles, right? Now these triangles are the same. If I put them together, they are equivalent to that rectangle. See that? So if I just kind of slide them together, there's the rectangle, but if I break them apart, I have two triangles. Together, they make one whole rectangle. So we can say that each one of these is half of the rectangle. So just like my paper here, like if I just draw a diagonal, make it a little bit straighter there, I can still see that I have a base of 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, a lot of people get a little confused because they say, well, wait a minute, you cut this one in half. That is true. But the actual base of the shape, if I just measure the bottom there, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 units across, and the height is the same. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. However, because we did cut it in half, we have half of the area. So the area of the triangle would be 24 divided by 2, or 12 square units. We don't even need to count the boxes because we know that if we were to cut a rectangle in half diagonally and I flip this over, it's the exact same. Okay, so if I just flip it over, I have the exact same shape. Actually, in this case, it probably wouldn't be a flip, it would be a rotation. See that? I had to rotate to make it work. See that? I'm going to do that again. Here's my rectangle, and instead of flipping it, because if I flip it, it doesn't quite line up, I actually have to rotate it. So I'm going to do that real quick and just show you what that looks like. If I rotate it around the center, kind of like a clock, they line up. See that? Okay, so we have two congruents. Now, what's really cool about rectangles is that you can create a lot of different shapes using those triangles. So if I were to put them together, I've made myself a parallelogram, which we're going to look at in a later unit. And I can kind of do some kind of creative work here just to kind of make it a shape that I would like. Looks like I can make a giant triangle. Look at that. Okay, so again, rectangles can be decomposed to make a lot of variety of shapes as well, specifically parallelograms and triangles. All right, so now in the video, we're going to take a look at a couple of the practice problems from chapter 3. All right, so we're looking at lesson 3. And in lesson 3, we are going to see if we can find the area of the blue shaded spaces. Okay, we're going to see if we can find the area of the blue shaded spaces. So I'm going to zoom in. Okay, one easy way is to count the squares. Okay, guys, so some of you in the room are perfectly fine. You like counting the squares, but I'm going to show you just a more efficient strategy, okay? Just a little bit more efficient work here. Okay, so in this shape, the most logical way would be to just divide it right here. I can just partition right here, and I can see that this is 2 units by 3 units, which is a total of 6 square units. I'm going to put 6 in the middle, and I'm going to circle it. Now, that one's small enough that I could count it pretty quickly. This one's a little bit larger, though. If I need to count the boxes for this one, it might take me a little while, and I may mess up. But I can clearly see that there's 3 along the bottom, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 along the top or the side, which would be like the height. So now I know that there's 18 in here, and 18 plus 6 is how much? Well, let's see. 8 plus 6 is 14, 14 and another 10 is 24. So this would be 24 square units. That one was pretty easy. Okay. Now, this one, we could look at this a couple different ways. Remember how I told you in the last video, sometimes it's better to look at the whole and subtract out what we don't need than it is to count what we have. So in this case, because it's squares, it might be easier just to say, okay, well, I know the blue square is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I know the total is 6 times 6, which is 36, right? So that would be one way. That's not the answer though, because the white space we don't want. So we want to subtract or take out the area of that square, which is 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3. And 3 times 3 is 9. So I need to subtract 9 from 36. And if I do that, I have 25. 25 square units. Now, again, we could count each one of these blue boxes, but we don't have to when we know how to multiply. We can find the area of the larger blue square, find the area of the smaller square, white square, and then subtract that out so we can find what's left. Okay, now these last two are very tricky. This goes back to our rectangles. I'm going to remind us that when we have a rectangle, half of the rectangle makes a triangle. So if you know the area of the rectangle, then you know the area of the triangle, which would be half of that. All right, so what we have here is we have a bunch of rectangles, and I'm just going to kind of like show you. Here's one. Here's one. See this? Here's a rectangle. And here's a rectangle. So what we have is we have 4 rectangles here. We have one right there. See that? We have one here. We have one here. And then we have one at the bottom. Okay? So really what we have is we have 4 rectangles that are cut in half. Now we can find the area of each one of those rectangles and put them together, or we can find the triangles. So I'm going to actually use a highlighter, and I'm just going to go, here's the 1. So I know that the base is 2 and the height is 1, 2, 3, 4. So if the base is 2 and the height is 4, I'm going to come out and just sketch it on the outside here. Okay. 2 times 4 is 8, but we only have half, right? We only have half. So 2 times 4 equals 8, and half of that, 8 divided by 2, means that this is just 4 square units. Now I'm going to check because I think we have 4 of the exact same rectangles. So I'm going to check it. I'm just going to use a different color, and I'm going to rotate my paper around, and I can see here's another one. 2 by 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there's another one. Again, this one is 4. I'm going to rotate it around again. Here's another one. Use different color. 2 by 4. So we know this one's 4 because it's the same. It's a rectangle cut in half. And then the very last one. These are all congruent. 4 congruent little rectangles in here, but we're looking at just half. Okay, so let's add them all up. We've got 4 groups of 4, which would be 16. 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. So that blue area would be 16 square units. Now, what's the deal with this one? Now, this one is a little tricky. I'm not going to lie. It is a little tricky. So let's use what we did here to see if we can find the inside shape. Well, look, if the rectangle on the outside is 4, that means inside is 4, right? So watch, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do this exact same thing. I'm just going to like make the rectangles. There's one. There's one. Do you see this? Here's one. And here's one. And we already figured out that each one of these is 4, right? This is 4, this one's 4, this is 4, this is 4, this is 4, this is 4. Because if the whole rectangle is 8, half of 8 is 4. So I know that there's 4 inside, there's 4 here, there's 4 here, and there's 4 here because it's the other half of the rectangle. And we already figured out that the blue area was 16, so that means that inside the square is also 16. But notice we've got one more spot that we need to account for. The square in the middle, which is also 4. So all together, we've got 4, 4, 4, 4, and 4, or 5 groups of 4. 5 groups of 4, which is 20. So that would be a 20 square unit space. And it would be harder to count this. It would be harder to count this because they're diagonals. But if we use what we know about rectangles, and we know that if you take a rectangle and if you know the full area of the rectangle and you cut it in half, then you know what half of the rectangle is. So we're using rectangles here to help us find the area of both of those shapes. It was a little tricky. Okay?